Justin Terry, in the midst of everything that was going on in the draft, Ohio State got a transfer commit from a redshirt freshman, Justin Terry. He's a kid from Picktown who went to West Virginia and is now coming back to Ohio. This is the second Ohio kid who went away to a different college who's coming back to Ohio State. Joseph, I'll let you speak to this first. You're a Pickerington guy. He's a Pickerington guy. This had to feel good, right?
Yeah, shout out to my alma mater, go Tigers. But yeah, this one's interesting. 3-star, not recruited by Ohio State, went to West Virginia, redshirted his freshman year. So there's no college tape on him. But he's back in Ohio State just 1 year after enrolling in West Virginia. I think at this point it's obviously probably a depth piece for Ohio State. I'd be surprised, barring injury, I'd be surprised if he cracks the top of the depth chart here in 2025. But it's an offensive line that needed some depth, and
Yeah.
that was an issue last year, and it was something that the coaching staff was able to navigate. But they really need to get some offensive line depth. So overall, I think you're happy with the signing because it's a solid depth piece. So I'm really excited. I love following the Central Ohio guys, so I'm happy with it for sure.
Chris, you want to
Yeah,
speak
I'm
to this?
I'm excited about this as well. It's always good to get Ohio kids. You know how much we say we love the Ohio kids coming to Ohio State, especially the linemen, Eric, because there's just something different about the way they play. Uh, but great size at 6'5", 338. So, he's a kid that I agree with Joseph. He's going to come in initially. He's going to add some depth, but he's also still, like you said too, Joseph, a young guy. He redshirted his freshman year. This is a guy with a lot of eligibility left. This is a guy who could work himself into a starter eventually. So, I mean, the opportunity is there. How many times have we seen guys who were 3-star prospects end up being tremendous starters? So, I'm really psyched to see what this young man brings to the table. And, welcome home. I think it's going to be great.
So let's talk for a minute about the fact that this is now the second transfer guy we've had from Ohio come back. Is there something to this with the transfer portal and them getting kids who maybe they didn't recruit at first, maybe they thought they weren't Buckeye caliber kids, but then they go away for a year, and then all of a sudden we bring them back in? What do you think's going on here with that, Joseph?
Well, I think there's something to it because if you're looking at Philip Daniels, played 2 years at Minnesota, wasn't recruited by Ohio State, but put some good film together at Minnesota in 2 years. Played very solid there at tackle, and got took a visit to Ohio State, and the rest was history. That's kind of a different story than the Terry situation because Daniels had played. Multiple games at Minnesota, but he grew up a Buckeye fan and, wasn't recruited, Cincinnati kid, went to Cincinnati Princeton, wasn't recruited by Ohio State out of high school, ended up going to Minnesota, but played really well for the Gophers. And again, took that visit to Ohio State, and the rest is he didn't, the rest was history. He had dreamed of being a Buckeye since a kid. So it's a great fit, and I love that pickup as well. And I think he's going to pay dividends for this team in the future.
So,
Chris?
Eric, I got to ask you, do you remember two chubby fellows delivering a lot of books to Worthington one day and having a talk with Ryan Miller about this very subject as it pertained specifically to offensive linemen in Ohio?
Yes, I do
How
remember
how
that.
he discussed the fact that with the portal, we should expect to see more of this because of the fact that they're going to send these guys to be developed elsewhere who aren't quite ready.
Yeah.
And when they get close, We're going to bring them back and let them play on the big stage. That's when the NIL is going to get there. You're going to spend your NIL money on your quarterbacks, your receivers, your running backs, and you're going to let these 3-star, low 4-star guys go develop somewhere else. Then you're going to bring them back and turn them into heroes and give them the NIL money when they've shown that they're worth it. I think that's exactly what we're going to start seeing. We're going to start seeing Ohio kids who, like Joseph said, were passed on by Ohio State for one reason or another, um, go to smaller schools, get seasoned up, kind of like Ohio State does with their coaches. Let's send them off to get seasoned up a little somewhere else. And then when they're ready for the big time, let's bring them back and let them show what they got. And I think that's what we're starting to see right now. So, yes, I do see this as a trend.
So let's, yeah, to build off of that point, Chris. Let's talk recruiting for just a second. Felix Ojo, one of the bigger names in the
Mhm.
2026 class when it comes to offensive linemen, came to Ohio State, loves Ohio State. Um, the Athletic put out that some of these recruiting services are doing an interesting disservice to these kids. They're
Yeah.
putting NIL value on these recruits.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible disservice because what you're doing is you're telling these kids and their parents, here's what your kid is worth. You're worth what someone's willing to pay you, right? That's how a free market society works. And Ohio State looks at it differently, as Chris is saying. Okay, there's only so much money in this pot with NIL, and they disperse it completely different than a lot of schools are doing by saying we're going to put so much of an emphasis or percentage on player retainment, transfer portal gets, and then recruiting, right? And they divvy it out every year based on a percentage. And I don't think Felix Ojo, I'll be shocked if he ends up being a Buckeye because I think Texas is going to throw a million plus at this kid where Ohio State's going to be like, no, we don't think you're worth that. And like Chris is saying, so he goes to Texas and he sits for a year or two because I don't care how good you are, unless your name's Orlando Pace, you're probably not starting at Ohio State as an offensive lineman in your first year.
Right.
It's just, it's so rare that a freshman walks on at Ohio State and starts year one, which means if you're going to put NIL on that kid, it's kind of a waste of money in that first year. And so what's interesting to see here is they've gone to the transfer portal now and they've brought two Ohio kids back to Ohio via the transfer portal where maybe they looked at their value coming out of high school and they didn't necessarily see what their value is to the program today. Does that all make sense? I hope I explained that right. Joseph, are you kind of following what Chris and I are saying here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've never been a fan of the NIL world we live in. I completely understand that they're looking at some of these 3-star prospects and they think, well, they're not going to be worth much to us, so they let them go to smaller schools, and then they see them and like, oh, these guys can play. No, let's bring them back in the transfer portal and realize how valuable they can be. I don't love I don't love the bidding war, but it's the world we live in. Like, I don't the bidding war between recruits. I mean, college football is basically free agency now. Like, Texas will probably outbid Ohio State for Ojo, and he'll go to Texas, and maybe he ends up back at Ohio State if he can't crack the starting lineup at Texas. But yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, and I wish there was a way we could mitigate some of this because I just don't love you look at the Nico situation with how that ended at Tennessee and how much of a mess that was. I mean, I just don't love the whole aspect of schools bidding for players, especially when they're still in high school, right? I've never been a fan of throwing millions of dollars at kids before they're even out of high school. So it's the world we live in, and I don't think there's a way around it, unless we get some sort of regulation in place, which we can all hope and dream there. I'm not sure the NCAA will ever step in there, but we'll see.
Yeah. David Sanders at Tennessee is another one that we can point at that's a very similar situation here, where Tennessee obviously offered him more NIL. And of course, if you all remember when he made that second visit to Ohio State right before he signed with Tennessee to try to basically see, to pump up even more money out of Tennessee by coming to Ohio State, and then Ohio State offered him less than his first time he visited, which I think is a great troll job by the
And
coaching staff, in my opinion. But it'll be interesting to see what David Sanders does. And let's say he doesn't start this first year. And so he goes into year number two, and maybe it's not the greatest year that Tennessee's got in year number two. I could see him totally hitting the portal and then Ohio State circling back around and then offering him a kid who's got 2 years of development now, basically the same number that he was wanting to get from them to begin with, and now he's ready to play possibly. Like that's the game that's being played here. In a way, it's kind of, I hate to use the word three-dimensional chess, but it's a, and as an accountant, Joseph, it's a dollars and cents thing here at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's definitely turned into a bidding war, which isn't the game we all grew up loving, but it's where we're at.
and can I just say this? And you mentioned it, these recruiting sites who are putting these value NIL valuations on these players. It's a massive disservice. All you are doing is the same thing that Deion Sanders did for his son, and look where it got him. You are overinflating the ego. You are telling them they're worth more than someone is willing to pay. And all you are doing is ultimately hurting their careers. Stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Let the and the worst part is NIL wasn't even supposed to be
No,
for recruiting purposes to begin with.
it wasn't.
It was supposed to be for people who came in and could make money at autograph shows or doing this or that for their likes once they'd established themselves. It wasn't meant to be a recruiting tool, but like Joseph just said, that is the world we now live in.
You're not even supposed to use it's not even legal to use NIL money as a recruiting inducement, but clearly it's happening, but we don't have any regulations. So what can be done at this point? I mean, some governing body has to step in, mainly the NCAA, and just enforce some regulations, or this is just going to escalate.
A
I
hundred
agree.
percent agree with you, and it already is. It already is. All right, let's talk about the fact that these are two Ohio boys. Now, one of the things that Chris and I pound the table for, Joseph, here on this show, we've been doing it now for ever since Chris joined the program 5 years ago, is that we need more Ohio kids. Now, I understand the fact that when you recruit nationally and you want to win a fictitious recruiting championship, right? That it takes getting 4 and 5 stars from coast to coast. I understand that. But one of the things that I will go to my dying grave believing is that Ohio kids who grow up in this state have a better understanding of that last game in the month of November than kids who were not born in this state and grew up in this state and under the shadows of Ohio Stadium. And for a I don't think you can get a better example of what I'm talking about than what we saw from Jack Sawyer after the 13-10 loss when he went to the middle of that field and was ready to die in the center of that block O, taking down that flag. That's what I'm talking about. I can't help but feel, Joseph, that this move by bringing kids into the trenches who are from Ohio is a little bit us saying we need to get a little bit more nasty in that game up front. Agree or disagree?
No, I completely agree, and I love they've gotten some really good offensive line talent that is homebred in this state. The Armstrong brothers from Lakewood St. Edwards are on the roster now, and really excited to see what they do. And then obviously getting Terry and Daniels. I mean, this is a the high school football talent is rich in this state. We need to, we should be there should be a fence around this state. And I know you're always going to let some slip, but with as strong as the high school football talent is in the state of Ohio, and Ryan Day has definitely. There was a time maybe 3 4 years ago where there was getting questioned about, we're letting too much good talent get out of the state of Ohio. I'm going to commend Ryan Day and the coaches. They've done a better job, and as far as bringing in talent from the state of Ohio. But yeah, it's absolutely imperative. I agree.
Yeah, it's funny. Joseph mentioned the timeline about 3 to 4 years ago. And if you think about it, do you think that this desire to bring in more Ohio talent has anything to do with the fact that during this time, over, of course, about the last 4 years or so, we've seen, you know, Coach Walton back, we've seen Coach Laurinaitis back, we've seen Coach Hartline back, Ohio State guys or Ohio guys who have that attachment to the program. I think they understand it, like you said, Eric, and they understand that these kids understand it just a little bit different. And I think that the fact we've got so many former Buckeyes as part of this coaching staff now have maybe influenced that a little in bringing more of the Ohio kids.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, 100%, man. I will, I will, I will defend sweater vest Jim Tressel to my dying breath. And yes, I understand that it was a different world we were living in at the beginning of the aughts compared to where we're at now, just generationally, and the sport's completely metamorph metamorphed into NFL light here. I get that, but I still think that Tressel, a lot of what Tressel's culture building and his demeanor and his kind of philosophy has really rubbed off on Ryan Day. And look what happened, Chris. We haven't talked about this yet. We called this out long before anybody else was
Yeah,
talking about it that Ryan Day was hanging out with Jim Tressel a lot last offseason. And I think that paid huge dividends during the season, and what Ryan Day was able to do with this roster, especially with building the championship culture that team had. But a part of that is recruiting, and Jim Tressel famously said, "We're going to build a wall around the state of Ohio." Now, there is an argument that the kids in Ohio are more apt to leave today than they were then, simply because the world is smaller today given the advent of the internet. And I agree with that you cannot deny that. When McNutt leaves for Oregon, and the linebacker slash defensive end who went to Alabama last year, his name slipped in my mind. Another 4 star slash 5 star kid. Those are going to happen more frequently than what we're accustomed to seeing. But I still think that these kids from Ohio, Ryan Day needs to give them a little bit of a closer look. Maybe circle back around them a little bit. And I think that's what he's doing here in the portal. It just feels like to me, he's like, you know what? I don't have Jack Sawyer on this roster anymore. I need to make sure that I go get another Picktown kid. I know I've got the Styles brothers. I need to go get another one because these kids understand this culture. They understand what it means to be a Buckeye, and I need that to rub off on the rest of this roster. Justin Hill, thank you, Tyler, appreciate that. You guys, your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, no, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, the players like Sonny Styles, another Pickerton Central, and Lorenzo Styles, that they understand the rivalry. Like and obviously their dad played at Ohio State as well. So kids like that understand the rivalry. So yeah, that's spot on. Like they get it. Jack Sawyer, another Pickerington kid, gets it. You saw how he hated to lose that game. Ty Hamilton's another example, another Pickerington kid. So, yeah, no, I completely agree. Need to really bring in those kids that really understand the rivalry and really focus on putting that fence around Ohio's. We've lost 4 straight. There's no denying how the rivalry has gone, but really keeping those kids local and putting a fence around Ohio and getting those passionate kids that grew up around the rivalry, I think that will really help going forward.
Yeah, and let me tell you, especially when you look down this, I understand that Ryan Day is going to go out and get the best talent that is the best fit for this team. But when it comes time that you're starting to go through the 3-star guys specifically, if you got a choice between a 3-star guy from Florida and a 3-star guy from Ohio State, that 3-star guy or from Ohio, that 3-star guy from Ohio needs to get all your love. Those borderline kids, those are the character guys that are providing depth, that can provide that quiet leadership. Can be, even if they aren't on the field all the time, they can be those locker room leaders. So I know you need to go out and get your 5 stars and your 4 stars from wherever you can get them. Hopefully, you land up as many from Ohio as you can. But when it comes time that you're doing those 3-star kids, man, 80% of those kids should be from Ohio. It's that simple.
Agreed. 100%.